What's up, and welcome to the No Bullshit Manifestation Show. I'm your host, Kat Kozad, manifestation expert, money mindset and fulfillment coach, and multiple six-figure entrepreneur. Come sit with me while I spill the real tea on what it's like to practice using intentional manifestation, demystify all of the woo-woo and confusing bullshit that comes along with creating the life of your dreams, and give you a realistic view of what it's like to be on a personal, spiritual, and professional growth journey. The goal of this podcast is to support and guide you towards manifesting all of your dreams, shed light on the things that people are too scared to talk about, and encourage you to become the person who gets to have it all, be it all, and do it all. I am so happy you are here. Let's fucking do this thing. What's up, y'all? Welcome to another episode of the No Bullshit Manifestation Show. I have the juiciest episode for you today. Oof, it is a good one. It is so near and dear to my heart because the guest that I have on the show today for today's episode is my life coach, and this man has helped me completely transform my life. When I first started working with him back in January of 2021, I was in a really challenging position. I had just hit six figures in my business a few months before, and I had basically manifested every single thing that I thought was going to bring me the level of fulfillment that I desired to have, and it didn't. And when I got to that place of hitting six figures in my business, buying the luxury car, having luxury experiences, traveling, just like creating this life of freedom, and it didn't feel the way that I thought it was going to and wanted it to, it scared the shit out of me. It was one of the most terrifying experiences to look at my life and the fact that I had everything that I had wanted and still didn't feel that level of happiness. And I felt like I was at a complete roadblock. Like, I didn't really know what else to do, how to move forward. I thought if I made more money, then maybe that would be the thing that could bring me the happiness that I wanted. But in reality, what I realized at that time is that my identity was so wrapped up in my business and was so wrapped up in just creating success for myself that I had never taken the time to really, really slow down within all of it and learn the lessons that each level had for me and create that level of fulfillment with inside myself that actually brings that level of fulfillment to the external manifestations that we bring into our lives. And that is when Keyen, our guest today, Mr. Keyen Lage, came into my life, and I honestly had no clue at that point how he could help me or what he was going to show me that I didn't already know, because I was already in this position of, I know this shit, I know about manifestation, law of attraction, I know how to go inside of myself, I know how to do the inner work, like how the fuck am I going to get over this? And this man has completely transformed my life. So I'm so excited to bring Keyen onto the show. Also, in addition to telling this little story in this intro, I will definitely do a full-length episode on this part of my manifestation journey, of the point where I had manifested all of the external things that I thought that I wanted and them not bringing me the level of fulfillment that I thought that they would. Because that is one of the biggest things that I recognize with people who are on this manifestation journey, is that they think that the external things, the money, the partner, the car, the house, the travel, the whatever the fuck it is going to be the thing that solves all of their issues. And then when they get it and they realize that it doesn't, it leaves them in the position that I was at of like, whoa. Like, what else? What, like, how the fuck do I get over this? And just honestly feeling pretty scared for me at that point in my journey, and feeling really, really stuck. So Keyen is a former NFL athlete. He'll explain that in his little bio, but former NFL athlete turned success coach for high achievers and visionaries. And this man is the shit. I cannot speak highly enough about Keyen and about the work that he does and just the person he is and the life that he leads. So without a further ado, here is Keyen, and I'm so excited for you guys to listen to this episode. What is up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the No Bullshit Manifestation Show. I am so fucking excited for today's interview. I have such an incredible and special guest to me coming on the show. His name is Keyen Lage. He is a success coach for leaders and visionaries. And just a little backstory and context for the listeners. Keyen has been my coach since January of 2021 this year, and this man has completely transformed my life just by being in his space and being in his energy, and the things that Keyen has done to help me create this life of freedom that I have is beyond words. So I'm so excited to have you on the show, Keyen. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, Kat, I'm stoked. I'm stoked. No bullshit today. We're going all the way in, and we're gonna give it to them as it is. So I'm excited to be here too.
Amazing. Yay. So for the listeners, if you would give us a little background on you, what has led you to who you are and where you are today, living this life of freedom and inspiration and just being the absolute fucking boss that you are.
Oh wow. Thank you. Thank you. Gal, I would say my story starts at the age of 10 when I told myself, I made a bold statement. I said, I'm going to go to the National Football League and play in the NFL. And I was able to get all the way there and ended up having an injury that didn't allow me to continue. So that quickly ended that career. And I realized I wanted nothing to do with my college degree, which was finance, and found that I absolutely loved being able to help people. So I'm like, what can I do to help people, to be able to empower people, to be able to get them to be able to achieve what I'd been able to achieve at such a young age, which was accomplishing my lifelong dream. Like, well, I want to do that. So I started getting into that. Personal training was the first thing that I'm like, okay, I can utilize the skills that I have and help people. And while I was going through that, I didn't share this, went through a big epiphany moment when I did get to the NFL that I didn't feel as I thought I would with the certain levels of fulfillment that I thought would come with achieving my lifelong dream. So along with helping other people be able to feel more empowered to accomplish what they want, I was on this mission to be able to find what fulfillment really is for me, independent of any kind of achievements that I have and what that would look like. So that was sort of my life mission while I was able to make a living helping people doing personal training. During that, I got obsessed about learning about internal health, and I created a program for people with autoimmune conditions and digestive disorders, and quit my job as a personal trainer and went full in on that. And had a lot of fun doing that, and found that most of the people that had these deeper rooted nutritional deficiencies and physical issues internally were struggling with something much deeper than just the food, which was more the mental, emotional health that they have and the relationship that they have with themselves. And so I'm like, well, why am I even messing with the food? Let me just go all in on the mental, emotional part of things. And so I started doing that with my clients, along with going through a lot of deep-rooted mental, emotional stuff for myself, and found that a lot of people that were in a very similar situation that I was, with being able to accomplish a lot of success, we're missing the piece of being able to have a certain level of fulfillment in the process. So I'm like, there's a problem here, and I think I can address this. So I'm like, what can I do here? What can I do for people that have these achievement issues, in a sense, that are working their butts off for something that's really not going to give them what they think it is going to give them? So I'm like, well, how can I help those people become more fulfilled with being able to not try as hard and being able to have more success? And that equation right there is what really intrigued me and fascinated me, and with myself and also with my clients. So now I don't do anything nutrition, no personal training anymore, just have those as kind of a back pocket thing. And I'm all in on showing people how to gain the success that they want without sacrificing themselves in the process.
Yeah, I fucking love that. And there's so many different things that you said in that we could go off of, but the one that really lights me up and inspires me is this piece of what you said, that you accomplished your lifelong dream. And you got to that place and you're like, this doesn't feel the way that I thought it was going to. Because I think that that's one of the biggest misconceptions that people face when it comes to a manifestation law of attraction, is that like they want to accomplish something because they think it's going to make them feel some sort of way, feel the level of safety, the secure, the happiness, the freedom. And I know that that's so true for me. And that's when I found you in my life, in my journey. And I remember first conversation that I had with you, I was like, no, I'm not going to work with him. I'm not going to my ego is so in the way and telling me like, no, you don't need this. You know, all about manifestation, you know, about personal development. Like you can figure this out on your own. And within like a few minutes of talking to you, you cracked me the fuck open. And you truly, truly do have this like depth of knowledge around what it means to create that level of fulfillment inside of you, regardless of those external things. So when you hit that place and you fulfilled your lifelong dream and it didn't feel the way you thought it was going to, what did that feel like for you? And like, what did that look like? How did it affect the way you thought life was supposed to go for you?
It felt in the moment, I felt I should say the absence of the continued heightened excitement, I should say, because obviously there was the excitement of like getting the opportunity, getting all the way there. And then once it kind of sunk in that I was there, and there wasn't the excitement anymore, that all faded. And it was like, oh shit, here we go, back to work. I was like, okay, here we go. And there's this pressure that started to build back up in me. It's like, okay, all the excitement's gone. Now I got to get to work. Right now I got to get going again. So it was more so this just like pressure that continued to be there after the initial excitement was gone. But then after I got the news that I'd never be able to play again, the feeling that I had was a lot of crying, a lot of tears, and a lot of disappointment in the first few hours. But after the first few hours, it was actually a slight sense of relief. And I would say I think those two kind of play together, in that all the pressure that I'd put on myself to be the best, to consistently always do the right thing that I knew was going to get me to that place, just sort of fell off. And yeah, it hurt a lot, not being able to ever play again, being the thing that I said I was going to do since I was 10. But there was this sense of relief that did come over me, because that pressure that I put on myself to be that thing or that person was no longer there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's incredible. Because I can imagine a lot of the people who are listening are in this position of creating some sort of life of success for themselves, or getting to this place where they're working towards an income goal or a business goal, or achieving something in their lives that they think is going to help them feel the way that they want to feel. And I can imagine I'll end up doing a podcast episode on this for myself. But when I first met you, I was in that position myself. I bought the luxury car. I hit the 6 figures within my business in less than a year. I did everything on paper that I told myself was going to make me happy. And then when it didn't, I was in this place of like, who the fuck am I? And like, where do I go next? And I truly didn't know how to get to what was next for me until we started working together. So like, what was it like in your journey of like finding that next thing and being able to get into personal training and pivoting from having your lifelong dream taken away from you?
Yeah, well, a lot of it was just sinking into nothing again, right? It's like when I played in college, I was a 2-time Division I captain, and they sold my jersey at the bookstore, and everybody on campus knows me. Everybody in the town knows me. Everybody in my state knows me, with being able to get to the NFL, and so few people do that. And I'm from South Dakota, so it's such a small state. So I was in such a significant position in the eyes of many people, and then all of a sudden, it's just nothing. And this is very relevant because I think a lot of people can actually use this that have had a certain level of success, being able to sink back into the nothing of not really having anything to shoot for or go for, and allowing myself the space and time to not have to have anything that I want to go for, and not have to have an answer for what's next, and really allow myself to sit into that space and just do what feels exciting, do what feels inspiring. And for me, what that was I went back to my parents' house and I just rode my bike to the library every day for a month straight and just read.
Mm-hmm.
And that through that, there's a few books that I picked up that was like, holy shit, like this is where it's at. Like this all this stuff about what you think you become isn't just rah words. It's explained through science, and that's what fascinated me the most, was seeing this information. And through that inspiration, I was like, you know what, let me get into a position where I can start to utilize this information that I have. And let me call this guy that was a personal trainer that offered me a job a couple months prior to that. So the space that I gave myself to, after accomplishing a certain amount, letting myself sink back into nothing and saying, okay, I'm gonna go back into nothing and just see what feels right and inspiring. Then let me not keep riding this wave. I didn't really have a choice, but other people that have, achieved, for you, the six figures in under a year and the car and all that stuff, letting yourself not have to keep riding the wave, but just sink back into nothing. You're like, okay, well, what feels inspiring for me now? And now that I've done the things, let me go back and let me sink into nothing and see what comes from that and see what emerges, because now you're no longer trying to achieve to prove to yourself of something, right? Because you've done those things. So now it's like, okay, what do I want just internally because of me, and what's fully inspiring me? Not just this thing that my, if you want to say ego, well, I don't like to use that term in that sense, but I think it's important for anybody to go after something and just go get it. But then when you do get it, give yourself permission to sink back down out of it and say, okay, now that part of me is satisfied of knowing that I can do this, what do I want now? What do I want now? And to me, it's just the next level. That's why I'd say to somebody that's watching this that hasn't really done accomplished much with their life or with themselves, I'd say just go after it, just relentlessly pursue it. But then when you get there and you feel what it feels like to get there, then we can take the next step, which is then sinking back into nothing and seeing what do you want to create? Now that you've satisfied that need to have to go do this, now what do you want independent of the need that you have to go do it? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that scares the shit out of people, especially like high achievers, leaders, visionaries, of like sinking into nothing, giving yourself permission to take this step back so that you can essentially like sit with the pressure and sit with like what actually does want to emerge out of you, because it's super counterintuitive to what we're taught, which is like follow the prescribed path, check the boxes, like do everything to get to this certain place. And once you're at this certain place, you should be feeling that way. And I know that was absolute truth for me as well, was like sitting in nothing scared the shit out of me. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I've really learned over the past few months, is like learning to be okay with that, learning to be okay with feeling fearful, feeling discomfort, feeling the sadness or the anger, or whatever it has been that has come up with this journey. And I know that you call that emotional sovereignty. And I would love for you to explain what emotional sovereignty is for everybody who's listening, because I know that's absolutely changed my life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to add this to it too, Kat, is you talk about that fear that you had of sinking into the nothing. Well, I would say that's not necessarily fear. It's just you got so good at programming yourself in this way of driving that now you're doing something completely different, right? You're telling yourself to do something different than the thing that got you all this success. So your brain's like, what the fuck are we doing? We just busted our ass to get all these awesome things, and you just got these awesome things. And now you're telling me to do something different? What is this? This doesn't make any sense. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's fear. I would just say you're doing something different than what you've programmed yourself to do, and you've had success doing it, which adds to your brain really liking it, Um, and so it's supposed to feel uncomfortable, but that's the beautiful part about life is once we get to this place where we master one element of the game, it's then coming back to the other side and mastering the other. And then there's always going to be that transition of our brain gets comfortable and safe in an operating system. And then when we say, hey, no, we're going to do the other way, you're going to experience all that discomfort. You're going to experience all that tension. And that's where we talk about being able to know that and say, hey, okay, I know that I'm going to experience this tension. This isn't wrong. This is just part of the process of me going from one operating system to another. Now I can sink into this tension. And through sinking into that tension, doesn't mean it's easy, creates the momentum to have that shift happen for that next leg up into the next season of life. So it's expected, and that's the cool part I think about what I do is I've gone through a lot of these games and these levels, so I can tell people what it's like, and it makes it
Yeah.
easier to transition through it. So I wouldn't say it's fear. I would just say it's you doing something different than what your brain's got a lot of gratification for doing, right? And it's totally normal and part of the process. So
Totally.
I wanted to add that in there. But then with the emotional sovereignty, it's the capacity to be able to do what you truly desire to do, independent of the thoughts, feelings, and opinions of anybody else or society around you.
Which is so beautiful to be able to understand for myself within in my own experience. And I think that that's something that a lot of people are challenged by is like, what does inspire me? What do I want to do? Like, what's actually coming from this sense of inspiration for me versus inspiration based off of like the societal pressures, the family pressures, the past programming, like you're talking about, that has always led the behaviors that people act within. So for somebody who's listening, who's just like, okay, yeah, like inspiration sounds great, but how the fuck do I find that sense of inspiration within myself? What would you say? Like, how does someone find that sense of inspiration if they have always acted out of their past programming and past conditioning?
That's a very interesting question because that's where it can get kind of confusing to me, because I suppose all of our actions and inspiration comes from somewhere. And now what that somewhere is I don't know. Is it something that was divinely planted inside of us? Is it something that we would have always done based off of how we've adapted to our past environmental circumstances that has led us to that point of getting in touch with what feels inspiring? I don't really know. I don't really know. So I don't necessarily think it's about getting in touch with that sense of inspiration, but being able to get to a place where you understand, I should say, you have a greater understanding of knowing that I'm safe in and of myself, regardless of what I decide to do. And so by creating that internal safety, which there's a process to that. So I'm not just saying that you can go create the internal safety. It allows us to tap into this place of it doesn't really matter because I'm going to be okay. And through being able to step into that place of I'm going to be okay regardless, it creates space for whatever that inspiration is of wherever it comes from to emerge. So it's not necessarily consciously trying to seek out that what some people may call intuition or inspiration, but more so being able to process and work through the deep-seated beliefs and programming that's not allowing you or anybody else to feel safe in and of themselves, that causes there to be this frantic energy of needing to operate from this unsafe place.
Yeah. Oh, I fucking love that. It's like, it's so true. And what you said of like this process of creating this inner safety, I think that there is a lot out there in terms of like personal development and the world of personal development and spirituality that teach a lot of that and do an incredible job of getting people to a certain place. And I know that that was so true for me in my experience. And it wasn't until I allowed myself and was in the kind of space where I felt safe enough to address those underlying deep-seated and deep-rooted insecurities and fears and experiences and traumas and whatnot that had happened in the past, that I truly understood what that safety meant, because I believe I was always acting out of that place of not feeling safe and doing things, acting within behaviors to try to feel safe, when in reality, it was just a matter of allowing myself to go into my inner world and find those different things. And I know that you and I have laughed about this a few times, of like, I've called this summer like messy girl summer instead of hot girl summer, because it's like, it's been a lot of like shedding old layers, shedding old identities, letting like all of this old shit go so that I can actually step into this version of Kat Kozad and like this inspired version of myself. And for the listeners, I think that that's one thing to really know and focus on. If you're in this place of you are achieving your goals, you are manifesting the things that you desire in your life, but it feels as though there's something that's stopping you from going to the next level, is that oftentimes those are the things that are still deep inside of you, and that you're safe to experience the emotion associated with those things, because that's how you actually can come to this place of safety within yourself, to hear that sense of inspiration and to know that you are safe, you are good, you are okay, regardless of what the external circumstances are, to follow that sense of inspiration or intuition, whatever you want to call it, inside of you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's where you mentioned the ability to be able to go in and experience some of those things through emotional expression. And, we can even make it like kind of like a technical, not spiritual, just by the book thing. And I had this conversation with a client the other day of strategic purging, where it's getting to this place of this relationship with our emotions, that when they come up, we understand that they're there and present for a reason, to clear out whatever's there that's preventing us from being able to get to that next level, and having this understanding that, whoa, okay, I need to go into this. Let me go into this emotion that's trying to be expressed, and not be afraid of it, but actually go in with the understanding that this is something that has to be purged, and it can make it a strategic purge. Now, if somebody is very analytical and very systematic in their nature, it can resonate more with those people. But it also takes a lot of the scariness out of it too. It takes a lot of the fear part out of it. And I think that's a big qualm that I have with a lot of the spiritual community is like, there's all these labels on things, and these big like traumas and relating to spirituality, and really it's all just deep-seated programming that has to be processed, that hasn't been healthfully processed. And until it's healthfully processed, it will run you. And when the emotion comes up, that's your opportunity to healthfully process it, or you strategically purge it, right? So you can then move on with your life. And so I'll literally, when I'm feeling like an emotion come up, I'm in bed and I can feel like, whoa, there's some tears that want to come out. I'll let myself just go all the way in on it. And this is a practice too, right? Like most people, we've developed a relationship with our emotions where it's difficult to give ourselves that permission. So it is a skill. I would absolutely say it's a skill to be able to do that. But then to be able to acknowledge that it's coming up and say, okay, here we go. There's something here that wants to be expressed. Let me go in and feel this. And have that relationship with it, and be an observer in that experience, and not think that I am the experience. It allows for that emotional purge to happen, allowing us to be able to move on from the thing that was preventing us from getting what we want with our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love hearing that has been your experience with it, where you truly have this knowledge of like, when it's coming up, that it is serving a purpose, and that it's safe to experience that. Because I know in my experience of working with all of the women that I've worked with and coaching, is that a lot of people don't feel safe to experience their emotions. I know that I was one of them for years and years and years of my life. And I tried to numb it out with alcohol and drugs and sex and all of these different things because my emotions were so scary to me that it was easier to numb it out with these different experiences than to just allow myself to do what you said of being like, whoo, okay, it's here, it's present. Like, I'm going to allow myself to go as deep as I possibly can into this emotion so that I can purge it and actually have it physically come out of my body to create space for me to fill it back in with what I want to be true for myself moving forward. So question for you is, if there's somebody who's listening to this that's like deeply resonating with the fact of like, yeah, I'm really fucking scared to feel my emotions, but I know that this is something that I need, like something that is going to benefit me, what would you suggest to that person?
Yeah, well, the first thing I would say is like, it's sort of similar to what I was talking about with that transition of going all in and grinding and working your butt off to get something and then going to this place of operating with more ease. You've just been in an operating system based off past circumstances that hasn't been conducive to emotions being an acceptable thing that are okay to be present, right? So to take a little bit of like scariness and take those words away from it and just look at it as you've been taught through your past circumstances that it's not safe for you to do that. I think it takes a little bit out of it. That's like, it's not that these things are actually scary. It's just your programming is there based off past circumstances that has caused this relationship with them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's it. And so I know that's a little mental, which I think for many people can be good. And I think it's powerful to know. But it's not that they're actually bad for you. It's not that it's going to last forever. I know it can feel like it's going to last forever, and it will feel like it's going to last forever if you're doing it right. But it's really just something that has to come up, and you have to learn how to be able to have this relationship through a different operating system with your emotions, and that it feels scary just because you've never accurately been able to do it. Like you never taught how to do it. So that's why it feels scary.
Totally.
Like I said, if you are doing it right, it will feel like it's going to last an eternity. That's the point. Because the moment that you fully submit to the experience of, holy shit, this is going to last forever, is normally what? Right when it starts to come back out. Right? The darkest point of night is always right before dawn.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
that's the difficult part, is giving yourself permission to go to that point of fully surrendering into the moment, allowing yourself to get to the place of coming back out of it. That's probably the most difficult part for me.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go with it, is that this piece of surrender to the experience and to the emotion, and what that surrender actually means. Because I know in my experience, and also with a lot of the women that I coach, is that past definitions or understandings of surrender has been like, you're just giving up and you're like, fuck it. Like, this is it. It doesn't matter. And like, nothing's ever going to change, which to a certain extent, in that experience of fully surrendering to the emotion and the depth of it, can feel that way. But just like you said, you turn the corner, and that's oftentimes like when the tide shifts and things start to go the opposite direction, and you start to build back up towards that pleasant, high vibe feeling emotion. But surrender, I know for myself, has been one of the most challenging things, which does prolong the experience. And so like in your experience, I know you just said is like oftentimes the most challenging thing for you as well. How does surrender, for somebody listening, how does it get easier? Like, does surrendering get easier, or does it always feel like, whew, this is really fucking hard?
Yeah. Well, I think a big thing for me is like, you actually don't have to surrender. Like, you can listen to this podcast, you can listen to what I'm saying, you actually don't have to. Because a lot of the times I think issues that people have get much worse because of guilt associated with not being able to do the thing that we think that we're supposed to do. So somebody might listen to this and be like, okay, well, I know I need to surrender. I know I need to surrender to my emotions. And when they come up, and they're going to come up, and they're going to be like, okay, it's time. and then you're not going to do it. You're going to get distracted. You're going to distract yourself. You're going to go do something else. Then you're going to beat yourself up for it. Then you got to deal with that, right? So what I would say is, if you're listening to this and you're bought in on the idea that going in and being able to experience and express your emotions is going to get you more of what you want, you actually don't have to do it. Because if you have the understanding that that is true and that's the case, then through you not doing it consistently over time, that'll create tension for there to be a moment of when you'll have no choice but to do it. It's kind of like this buildup. It's this buildup. It's this buildup. It's this buildup. Right? It's kind of like, for example, let me say somebody that is a little overweight and they think they need to stop eating all this extra crap to be able to get into shape. Well, I might say to them, I'd say, just keep eating a bunch of shit. Just keep eating a bunch of, if you're eating a bunch of pizzas and Oreo, just keep going. Just keep going. Just keep going. Don't stop. Don't stop. And eventually, they're probably going to be so sick of looking at themselves and feel like so much shit that might create the tension in the space for them to go, I'm fucking done. Mm-hmm. Right? And so I would say that's the case here with this as well. If you know what's right and you believe that this is true, give yourself permission to not have to do it, because eventually you will.
Yeah. I love that. So two things come up for me on that one is that another analogy that you've given me on this is like, it's kind of like getting punched in the face over and over and over again by the uncomfortable emotions, by whatever it is that you are experiencing, getting punched in the face over and over and over again. And eventually it's like, you're going to get sick of being punched in the face. You're going to stop wanting to like try to stand up to that and like try to avoid how to not get punched in the face, because it's inevitably going to happen. And that is when the change happens, because you're so sick of it, so uncomfortable with it. And also for anybody who's listening, it's like, I think that there's this misconception when you look up to somebody like any of these spiritual leaders, any of these personal development leaders, any of these coaches, you're like, you put them on a pedestal almost, and you're like, that person has their shit figured out. Like, they don't do that anymore. Like, that's incredible. I want to get to that place. And I just like, I want to put the level of honesty and transparency out there that it's like, I still do it. Like, I get punched in the face by shit all the time that it's like, I know I shouldn't, quote unquote, shouldn't be doing that anymore, or I shouldn't be playing into that behavior anymore. But it's like, that takes away our humanness when we idolize that, or we think that that's the ultimate goal to get to this place of, I shouldn't be like that. I should be this healed person who doesn't act within any of my old behaviors anymore. And just knowing that it's like, it's okay that you do, because ultimately you'll probably get punched in the face by it again, and you will shift eventually. Just like you said, like giving yourself permission to not do it, because by not doing it, you will do it eventually. And that's beautiful to be able to get to that place, and trust that that is the process of what is playing out.
Yes. And somebody might listen to this that has operated from a place of pressure and force and strict structure in pushing themselves. And they might get anxious hearing that. Like, they're going to be like, hey, don't tell me that. Tell me what I need to do. Tell me how often. Tell me da. And it might make you a little anxious, but that's good, because sounds like it's the beginning of the transition into a new season. And that anxiousness is great to be here, and allow it to fully be here in the presence of it. And I think it's really fun. It's really fun transitioning into that different season of changing that relationship. And if you are anxious hearing that, that's good. But you're probably actually going to feel a little relief if you allow yourself to feel that anxiousness. Relief will probably follow, because there's not going to be a pressure put on yourself to have to go do that thing, like you've probably done with listening to a million other podcasts or reading a bunch of other books. The pressure you put on yourself to apply all the information that you've read and listened to, right? So here, I'm not saying you should or have to do any of this, and honestly, you shouldn't. Like, you shouldn't do any of this. Like, if you don't want to, you really shouldn't, because eventually you will.
Yeah. I remember when we first started working together, you said that to me. And I was in that position of wanting, like, okay, like,
what do I do? I remember at the end of our calls, I would always be like, okay, Keyen, like between now and next call, like what should I do? And you're like, nothing. Like give yourself the permission to not, and to like live your life, and tell me what comes up next week, and just like giving yourself that experience of like not putting this pressure that you need to accomplish X, Y, and Z before the next call. And that was huge for me, because that was the first time in my life that anybody ever told me that that was an option, that I didn't have to accomplish X, Y, and Z to get to the place that I wanted to be. In my opinion, you're the epitome of like what living in inspiration and allowing yourself to follow what feels good and accept what doesn't feel good is, and coming to this place of like inner peace and acceptance and love. And I think a lot of it comes from you giving yourself permission to break the rules and go against the rules, as opposed to constantly depend on the rules to get to the place that you think you need to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like to use the rules as like small little safety nets, like little buoys next to me when I need them. But then when I like getting a next level of my ability to swim, you're like, all right, get out of here. I'm on to the next one, then there might be other rules that might be at the next level that I might play with for a little while as some stability, and then swim on to the next. But yeah, it's crazy and wild and interesting. And I want to say this too with you, in that just because I said not to do anything doesn't mean that you didn't do anything. Right. Now the difference between when you've done things historically compared to when we started working together was that now that there wasn't the level of pressure to have to put your head down and be in the middle of it, of like, okay, I got to make sure that I'm sending these many emails and reaching out to this many people, and I'm doing all these little specific tiny little things. And when you're a worker bee inside of it, you can't see the big picture. And so by me telling you, you actually don't have to do anything, it didn't mean that you weren't doing anything. It just meant that you were able to zoom out and look at the big picture, because you weren't having to put your head down and do a million things, which gave you a different perspective that allowed you to tap into greater levels of knowing within yourself to take better action inside of your business that allowed you to not work as hard and make more money. Right. So I really want to say that is that this isn't all about not doing anything. Right. My goal isn't for myself or for anybody that I'm working with to do nothing, unless that's inspiring to them for a period of time. But really what not forcing you to do anything does is it creates space to zoom out and to not have to be the one in the business like this. And that creates space for greater levels of understanding and more powerful action. That's not a million things, but more so 5 that have a greater impact than doing the million things.
Absolutely. 100%. Because in that almost like permission to not do what I had been doing historically, which was like, okay, wake up, morning routine, start work by this time, have to work until a certain hour in the evening, work out, do some sort of mindset work in the evening, have dinner, journal before to bed, and do it all over again. I actually started to resent living that life, because it wasn't coming from a place of inspiration anymore. It was coming from a place of force. And one of the biggest things that I've really learned over the past few months is that when you do give yourself permission to take that step back and see it from a different perspective and like from a wide angle lens, is that most people, and I can imagine most people listening to this, is like, if there was the inspiration to start the business in the first place, or to go after what it was that they wanted in the first place, that inspiration is still going to be there outside of the like very strict, forceful structure that they've created for themselves. And sometimes that structure is actually the thing that is stopping them from going to the next level. One of the things that you said to me on the very first call that we had was, what got you here won't get you there. And that's been so true for me in my experience. So I would love if you would explain that as well, as like what you mean by like what's gotten somebody to a certain point in their life won't get them to what else they want.
Yeah, 100%. And I want to reiterate here too is that if you haven't built something, if you haven't created a certain level of success for yourself, that doesn't necessarily apply to you. I think there's a very important season of life of putting your head down and working hard and developing routine, developing consistency, learning how to take control of your life. But then after you've learned that, you've gotten what you want. Like I said earlier, it's like, okay, once you master this level of programming, then you come back this other end. And now in order for you to continue to have success at the scale you'd like to in all the different areas of your life, you no longer can be operating that place because your business is expanded to the point where you just literally can't keep doing this. You have to be able to zoom out so you can create better systems, more efficiency in your business. And you're doing less of the busy work by delegating and allocating those tasks to other people or completely eliminating them.
Yep.
But that's where it's all seasons of life, right? So you went through that season. I went through a season of working really hard and developing the systems and structure and consistency that I needed to be able to get to the point of that next level, which is then being more of the CEO of your business and of your life. And in order to be successful in that next phase after you've had success, and that the early success in business, it's going to require you and in life to take more of that CEO role of the visionary, of the one that's overlooking all of it, not being the one that has their head down, trying to meet with as many people as you can to get connections, doing all of your own small busy work and tasks. Like, no, like you shouldn't be talking to 5 people and giving value to everybody every day anymore. Like it's different and it changes, and it's just being able to be aware of those levels and how they work, and being able to make that transition from one operating system to another once those certain milestones are reached.
Absolutely. And another perspective that I want to put in there for anybody listening is that, like, if you're in the position that you haven't been on this path that Keyen and I have been talking about, of like creating the business or going after whatever it is that you want for yourself in your life. It doesn't have to be a business, but creating that life that you want. The same thing applies if, like, what you're saying of like, that takes dedication and discipline and hard work to bring yourself out of the old operating system, potentially like being the victim, playing into like the blame game, all of these different things that have created this life that doesn't serve you, that feels like subpar, feels like it's settling, and getting to the next level. It's like, what got you to this place in this life that you're living right now isn't going to create the change that you want to create in your life. Things have to change in order for you to change, no matter what level you are at. And really recognizing that it's like, in order for you to get to the place that you want to get, to live the life of freedom, whatever it is, you have to be willing to evolve. And you also have to be willing to take yourself out of your comfort zone and be really fucking uncomfortable.
100%. Absolutely. And I want to say this too. There's no rush to get to different levels, because it's similar to what I said with the emotional stuff. When you hit that point where you fully surrender, right, the darkest point of night, right before dawn, when you really surrender to it, it's normally when you start to come out. I think there's this, because there's so much awareness of levels, and there's so much awareness of what it is to be a king, and so much awareness of what it is to be a queen and to be enlightened, and all these kinds of things, that people are more focused on trying to get to that place rather than just owning where they are. And I think that's something I've done incredibly well throughout my life, is giving myself permission to be a beginner, to not be a finished product, and to allow myself just to own wherever I'm at. And through me doing that, I become really good at a lot of things. And I'm willing to be that beginner. I'm willing to ask all the questions. I'm willing to put the time in the beginning to understand how things work and how they function, which has allowed me to be the best in the world at what I do now. It didn't come from me just trying to get to this point as fast as I could, scaling as fast as I could. No, No, that's not what I've done. I've taken the time to learn how to be a beginner, because I've learned how to be a beginner and be okay with where I've been and the places that I was at. It's allowed me to be propelled to this place of being the best in the world at what I do. And
Yeah.
I want to say this, in different ways, when certain things come up in my life, I still give myself permission to be a beginner. It's like, whoa, I'm in the season of life now where things are clicking on such a high level, uh, with such minimal effort from me. It's like dealing with those feelings that come up of like, holy fuck, like this is like, I'm getting more and more and more with less and less effort, right? And so it's just
Yeah.
different things that come up as you move through this process that you have to deal with, right? But if you just consistently give yourself permission to just own where you are, if you haven't had success yet, consistent success, and you're not out of the place of that immediate survival where you don't have a foundation of money, really, where you're really hustling and grinding, own that shit. Like just go in and just own it. And if you give yourself permission to do that and don't judge yourself for not being at that next place, it'll actually allow you to get to that next place faster. And
Yeah.
that's why I give people permission not to have to do even the things that I say to them on a call. Like, you
Yeah.
actually don't have to do any of this, Kat. You really don't have to, right? And that part of your brain that's like, I want to keep doing it my way, is like, oh, well, if I don't have to, then fine. But then you end up doing it anyway. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right? It just gets rid of some of that pressure. So that's what I would attribute a lot of my success to, is being able just to own the season of life that I'm in, and not have to like be in this other place, knowing that of what I am internally deep down and what I want to be, but not having to put the pressure on myself to get there anymore. And that's what I used to do with football, and I learned that lesson in that experience.
Yeah. Thank you so much for saying that, because I think that's definitely one of the biggest things that I experienced, and I see a lot of the women that I work with, and I can imagine a lot of people listening to this podcast are experiencing, is like that pressure to get to that place, to hit that level of success, and the pressure that they put on themselves to get there, comparing themselves to other people's experiences. I know that like I would compare my chapter 1, my being a beginner, to somebody else's chapter 30, and I tried to skip as many levels as I possibly could to get to this place. And every single level that we go through has the experiences that we need to accomplish and we need to graduate from to get to the next level. And I don't think I realized that on this journey until you came along and shared your experience. And I also saw that there were these missing pieces from each level, and going back and giving myself that permission to be the beginner and to be in the position where I didn't have to have it all figured out, where I didn't need to be this like perfectly scripted version of myself in order to be accepted and to be seen and to create the transformation and the support that I wanted to create for other people. And by giving myself permission to do that and to be vulnerable and to be seen, I've actually created a bigger impact. And like you said, it's like I've efforted less, I've made more money, I've had more fun, I've done so fucking much, and like actually been able to sink into what has felt like absolute freedom in my life. Whereas before it was very conditional based upon the external level of achievement that I had created.
Mm. Yeah, I love the way you described that, and I love that you brought up like each individual level. It creates the foundation that you need to go on to the next.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is, because especially a lot of marketers are spewing information about how every coach and how every entrepreneur should be making 10K a month right now, doesn't make it easy to be okay with the level that you're at or the space that you're in. Right. So I can't blame people for wanting to rush to the top when there's all these people saying that they shouldn't be where they're at. They should be in somewhere else. But it's actually the owning of wherever you're at with the direction of somebody that can take you to where you want to be, that allows for the real long-term money to be made and long-term success to be had. It's like somebody that's won the lot, like wins the lottery. It's like they win $1 million. Then how often do people actually grow that money or make it into something? Never. Right. So if you're busting your ass just to get to the point that you think that you should be, when you get there, eventually the lack of foundation or the lack of solid ground underneath you will have to be addressed. The house of cards is going to fall, and the house made of sticks will be blown down.
Yeah.
The big bad wolf will blow it down, and that's the power and importance of giving yourself permission to own and be where you're at, is that it creates long-term stability, and it creates sustainability that is way more valuable than not being able to handle a little bit of discomfort in the moment of not being where you want to be now.
Totally. Yeah. 100%. Which has been another thing that I have experienced. And I just love to say that for anybody who's listening, because I want anyone who's listening to know that like they're seen, and that they're not alone in that experience of feeling that guilt or that shame that they should be somewhere else. And that what Keyen is saying is so true, of like giving yourself permission to just slow the fuck down and be where you're at and graduate this level so that you can go to the next level. And that these external forces, they're always going to be there. They're always going to pressure you, and giving yourself to be okay that you're where you're at, and that by being okay with where you're at, you're actually doing so much for yourself to actually take those steps forward. That's going to give you this solid foundation to continue to grow and ultimately get to the place that you want to get to within your life.
That's it. I want to say this as a disclaimer too, for anybody out there, is that you may hear this and say, okay, I know it's important for me to own where I am. I know it's important to own the level that I'm at. Okay. But I'm still impatient, and I still want to be somewhere that I'm not. And I want to say, that's okay too. Mm-hmm. You can not be okay with where you're at. That's fine. That's also okay.
Yeah. 100%. Awesome. This has been such an incredible conversation, and I'm going to wrap it up. But one question that I have for you, for the listeners, and in this is that if you had one piece of advice to give to somebody who is in that position of either they have created some sort of level of success and they feel as though they need to keep going, and like not give themselves that break, or somebody who is just getting started and wanting to create that change, what would you say to them? What would be the one piece of advice for where they're at that could help them either accept or change where they're wanting to go?
Well, what I know about change is that change is very difficult to make happen when there's excessive force on wanting to change. So if you just give yourself permission for a second to not have to change and sink into that and what that feels like, that can create the space for real inspiration to emerge. So, like I said, the thing that I think that I've been able to do very well is that giving myself permission to not have to know that next thing, and to not have to push forward. That's created the clarity for the next level of inspiration. So if you let go of the need to have to change, for example, if you're having imposter syndrome, right? Many people feel like they have imposter syndrome. Well, to me, we kind of all are imposters in some way. That's why we feel like we're imposters, because we're all just kind of taking bits and pieces of what we know and putting things together. And some people know how to play the game human a little better, but we're all kind of imposters because we're all just making it up as we go anyway.
Yeah.
Right. So what if you just let yourself be a fucking imposter? Mm-hmm. Like, yes, I am an imposter. Okay. I don't have to not be an imposter.
Yeah.
Right. And just like, I am an imposter. Okay. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Right?
It gives you a lot of power to redefine like the the things that are quote unquote good or bad, positive or negative, and just like be.
That's it. And being able to sink into that place of okayness is what creates a space for that level of understanding, right? Inside the nothing emerges those beautiful thoughts and ideas that can be your most powerful pieces of inspiration that's going to take you to the place that you want to be.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. There you have it. That's like, I think there's been so much wisdom, inspiration, clarity created for everyone who listens to this episode. And I just once again want to thank you for coming on and being able to like make that happen for everyone. So if people want to find you, because I'm sure they're going to be fucking obsessed with you after listening to you talk on this episode, where can they find you? What do you have going on right now that people can be a part of?
Yeah, KeyenLage.com is my website. Keyen.Lage is my Instagram. And I'm sure Kat's going to put the spelling of those in the show notes. But that's really it. I don't have a community that I've created. I come into other communities and I help enhance them. But for now, what I like to do is I like to just kind of roam and do my own thing. I don't want the responsibility of a community, but I do love enhancing them a lot. So you can check me out on my website, on Instagram, and reach out to me personally if you want to know more.
Amazing. Yay. Thank you, Keyen. So awesome. And I love that you've been able to come on and just give everybody this level of permission. And also what you just said, and like, you haven't created a community, you haven't done those things. You're just giving yourself permission to do what you want to do. And on the No Bullshit Manifestation show, that's real as fuck. Just giving yourself that permission.
Thanks, Kat.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I am so grateful to have these no bullshit talks with you. If you enjoyed today's episode or the podcast as a whole, please spread the love by leaving me a review on iTunes or sharing the podcast with others. This is how I will be able to spread more of these good vibes and be able to make more of an impact on the lives of others. And if you're not already part of all of the goodness and communities that I have to offer, check out the show notes. I have links to the different ways that I can support you on your manifestation journey and help you live a life full of more money, fulfillment, and freedom. But that is all for now. So big love and hugs, and I will chat with you soon, babe.